Hello there, kids. Gather close around the phonograph. I'm going to tell you a story. Maybe I should introduce myself. My name is Tennessee. Now, you may think that's a pretty funny name for a person to have. I'm very proud of it. Besides me, some very important people were born in Tennessee. For instance, Davy Crockett. You remember. Born on a mountaintop in Tennessee. Greenest state in the land of the free. Raised in the woods, so he knew every tree. Killed him a bar when he was only 3. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. Hey, look, I don't want to take time to sing all the rest. Of course, I got to begin to commence to start telling the story I have to tell. Will you wipe your nose, please? Do you have a favorite toy? A little truck or a fire engine? Or perhaps a doll or a stuffed animal? You know, a toy that you really like. And does that toy like you back? Good. Well, that's the way it is with me and automobiles. I love them. And because I take good care of them, they like me, too. The first car I really liked was a 1927 Willys Knight. It was an open car, but it had a set of isinglass curtains that you put up when it rained. It had extra wide running boards, too. Oh, you're kids. You probably don't even know what a running board is, do you? It's not a board that runs with feet. In the old days, you didn't have to step right into a car like you do now after squatting down low so as not to ruin your back. You stood right up tall and you stepped onto an outside step which was called a running board. And then right into the car, and then you banged your head and hurt your back and cried a lot. Sometimes people let their dogs ride alongside outside on the running board. And when the dog fell off, that was called a running dog. I had a lot of close car friends in my life. There was a Hudson, and a Huckmobile, and a Durant, and even an Etzel. The Etzel was a rough car to get insurance for, because as soon as you filled out the papers for the insurance, by the time the policy cleared, they didn't make them no more. Well, the story I want to tell you is about the best car friend I ever had. His name was Herby, and he was a love bug. I used to live in an old firehouse on the top of a hill in San Francisco, with my good buddy, Jim. Jim was a racing driver. Little Herby liked me and understood me, but he loved Jim. That's how we got him. Now, you're not going to believe this, but Herby followed Jim out of an automobile showroom and drove himself right up and parked outside our house. Now, I have to tell you about this. There was a bad guy in this story. You know, a story's not really much of a story unless there's a bad guy in it. And the bad guy in my story is one of the world's worst. His name is Thorndyke, and he's the owner of an automobile agency which sells Ferraris, Maseratis, Mercedes, and such. Thorndyke is a terrible person. He's a contemptible cur, a liar, a thief, a saboteur, generally not a nice man. He not only almost got us all killed several times, but he wanted to get Herby and mash him up into scrap metal. At the beginning of the story, though, he owned Herby. He didn't like him at all, and he treated him rotten, but he owned him. So when Thorndyke and the police found Herby parked in front of our house, they naturally supposed that Jim had stolen the little car. Jim was about to be thrown in jail when Carol, a very nice young lady, even though she worked for Thorndyke, she was pretty, she was a rare beauty, and she was swell. She arranged an agreement whereby Jim would buy Herby, paying very little down and not too much a month for the rest of his life, plus 63 days. The very first thing Jim did was to give Carol a ride in his new car. It was some special kind of ride. Jim told me all about it the next morning.
That car, Tennessee, it's something else. You wouldn't believe it.
Give me a chance not to believe. What's to not believe about that little sweetie of a car?
Well, last night I wanted to drive Carol home from the place she works.
Yes?
And that little car wouldn't do anything right. It shimmied, it shook, it rattled, it rolled. The accelerator stuck, the brakes wouldn't work. And so I complained to Carol. After all, she had sold it to me. And she was miffed, cross and angry, and said, let her drive. So I did.
And what happened?
While Carol was driving that little car, it was a dreamboat, a whiz kid. Why, a couple of kids challenged us to a drag, and that little car, well, 10 You won't believe how fast it went. It left the hippies standing like they were stuck in cement.
So what happened then?
So, I took over the wheel.
And?
Things went wrong again. I couldn't control that car. It drove us to Lover's Lane.
Sweet.
Not so. Carol thought I was getting fresh, and she hit me with her purse.
You probably deserved it. You just met the girl.
Not funny, Tin. I was innocent. But there's something very unusual about that little car, and I want you to find out what it is. I've got to go downtown, but while I'm gone, I want you to examine that car from front to back to bottom to top. Because if that little bug has got really what it showed last night, I'm going to race it, and I think win.
So as soon as Jim left, I went down to the little car and started talking to him. Herby, Jim tells me you're quite a machine. Now, I'm a welder, and I can fix anything. Mind if I have a look at you? Wait a minute, Herb. Let me get the hood up. Oh, Herby, you're a beauty. Look at those 4 sweet little cylinders. Would you mind turning your motor on again? Well, you got a little cough there. I can fix that. Yeah, that's better. Isn't that better? Oh, now you sound smooth, Herby. What's the matter now? Oh, I see. Out of gas. Well, I'll get you a long, cool drink of this super special highest octane gas. Well, that's plenty of go power you got there, Herby. How about your stop power? Let's try your brakes. Sounds like you need some adjustment in that department, too. Stop me if I tickle. That's fine now. How about your lights? Okay, windshield wiper? Great. Horn? Yeah, never will do. Can't have you sound like that. Yeah, this should do it. Okay, Herb, you're 100%. Now, I want to tell you something about your new owner. Jim's my best friend, and he's a wonderful guy. He's a race driver. Good one, too. But lately, he's been running in bad luck. From what Jim tells me, you have lots of speed, Herby, and if you could win a couple of races, it sure would be a great thing for all of us. What do you think? Good. Good. And thanks, Herby. When Jim came back, I tried to tell him what an unusual little car he had. I told him about my theory that some machinery really has personality, and that his little car was tops. But he didn't get the picture. All he said was that he thought he could make something out of that sad little bucket of bolts. After he left, I apologized to Herby. Jim didn't really mean it, I said. But Jim really did want to race the little car, so he entered in a second-rate race, and Carol and her miserable boss, Thorndyke, and I went out to see what might happen.
Isn't that the grubby little car we had in the shop, and a person who bought it?
I believe you're right.
It's not possible.
He's passing all the others.
I don't believe what I see.
They're coming through the downhill curve on the last lap. The winner, number 53, Jim Douglas, driving a Class D Special.
Herby, you did it! You won! Well, Mr. Thorndyke just couldn't believe that the little car was that good, or that Jim was a good driver. So, in his fanciest, fastest car, he took us on in one race after another, and got badly beaten every time, whether we were racing in Mexico or wherever. As Jim kept winning, his confidence in himself grew, and he seemed to think it was all his driving. But I knew Herby had something to do with what was happening. On the night before the big race at Riverside, in which Mr. Thorndyke was driving his fastest special against Herby and Jim and me, Jim and Carol finally got around to having a date. I got real mad at Jim because he didn't take Herby along. Herby needed relaxation, too. But no. Carol drove Jim in that snobby but speedy Apollo, who was going to race Herby the next day. It wasn't fair to Herby, and I tried to explain it to him. While we were talking, that bad guy Thorndyke showed up.
Good evening, Tennessee, and how are you?
I want to talk to you.
But I just came by to pay my respects to that gallant little car.
Huh? Since when? He's beaten you 5 out of 5.
Yes, I know. And tomorrow at Riverside he may well do it again.
No doubt about that.
To think that this gentle piece of machinery is capable of such great deeds. However does he do it? How indeed?
You want to know the secret of this little car? I'll tell you the secret of the little car. It's heart. That's what it is. Heart.
I shall make a note of that. Thank you, Tennessee. Must go now. See you tomorrow at Riverside.
Like the dummy I am, I didn't watch Thorndyke closely enough. And while I was washing the dishes and talking to him and getting taken in, he was pouring whipped cream into Herby's carburetor. The plot and the whipped cream really thickened the next day at Riverside. Here comes Herby.
Tennessee, there's something wrong here.
Stop worrying, will you? You think Herby would let you down?
Maybe we outmatched ourselves this time. Look at these entries.
I know we're uptight here, but let's don't forget what kind of a car you got.
Clear the grid, please. Everyone, clear the grid. A fine start. Within a few moments, we can see the resumption of the current battle between Peter Thorndyke in number 11 and Jim Douglas driving number 53. Thorndyke, starting near the pole position, is already bearing down on the leader.
Yeah, well, look at Herby go. He's taking the lead.
Here's number 53 leading the field in the first lap. And there in second position comes Peter Thorndyke, trying to overcome the little car which has been his nemesis all season.
You got him, Herby!
53 is slowing down. It looks as though the Douglas car is having trouble.
What's the matter, Herb?
Yes, the little car is fading fast. He's staggering back and forth all over the track. Wow, that was a close one. The car passing 53 almost hit him.
Bring them in, Jim! Bring Herby in! Of course, Thorndyke won the race, and he really rubbed it into Jim. So Jim took off. I bundled Herby into our truck and drove him home. Oh, he was awful sick. When I examined him, I found whipped cream all through his system, and it had turned sour. Just then Carol came in.
May I come in?
Oh, sure.
I wouldn't blame you if you threw me out.
On account of what Thorndyke did? How can I blame anyone? Thorndyke ruined the car right under my nose.
Where's Jim?
I don't know. I haven't seen him since the race. He left Herby and me flat.
Foul plugs, burnt wiring, split oil line. Doesn't Jim ever take care of his car after a race?
He always did before, but not this time.
Got an extra set of coveralls? I'll help you get Herby cleaned up and well again.
I don't know.
Don't worry. I'm not with Peter Thorndyke anymore. I quit.
So that's it.
So that's it.
That's why Herby likes you.
Herby likes me? How can you tell?
Oh, I can tell. Look, Carol, I got to level with someone. I can't talk to Jim. It would destroy him.
Why destroy?
Well, you don't know what it was like before this little car came along. Jim was completely defeated. He pretended like he wasn't, but it was murder. He couldn't keep a job. He got into trouble all the time. Everyone was sore at him. Then this little car came into his life. You remember that day.
I remember.
Jim started winning races. He got his self-respect back. Okay, but what was I going to do? Keep telling him it was Herby who was winning the races and not him?
Was it Herby?
Jim's a good driver, but it was Herby. You don't believe me?
I don't know what to believe.
Good. That's a start. You don't have to believe it all right away. It takes time. In a couple of hours' work, Carol and I had Herby good as new again. But when we took him outside to give him a bath, disaster struck. Jim drove up in a brand new red Ferrari he just bought. Herby took one look at that car and took off down the street in a rush. Jim and Carol couldn't believe their eyes. But there it was. I told Jim he'd broken Herby's heart by buying the Ferrari. And Jim believed me, and he went out searching for Herby. Up and down the dark streets he searched. Finally, out onto the Golden Gate Bridge, where he found Herby just in time to save him from jumping into the bay. But Herby was still heartbroken, and he got away from Jim again and led Jim on a wild chase through the streets of Chinatown. It ended when Herby crashed into Wu's grocery store and practically wrecked the place. The upshot of all of that was that both Herby and Jim wound up in jail. Carol and me found them there. And while they made up and were good friends again, we were all still in trouble. Between us, we didn't have any money to pay Mr. Wu for the damage to his store. So he took Herby instead. You see, Mr. Wu was the hippest Chinese car racing buff ever. But I made a deal with him.
Wu Xing你好吗？身體益好啦。喐你喐㗎紅顏。
Oh, yes, I will enter this little car in the Golden Sweepstakes race, and Mr. James Douglas will drive. Furthermore, if we win, I will sell the little car back to Mr. Douglas for the sum of $1 American.
So we thought all was well again, but we hadn't counted out the crafty Thorndyke yet, and were overconfident. He accosted Mr. Wu, and knowing the Chinese love of gambling, lured him into a bet.
I understand, sir, you are now the owner of this little car. Oh, yes, it is true. Being interested myself in the vehicle, I took the liberty of looking you up. I know you are a man of many facets. You own many different businesses. It is truly written, you cannot lose them all. Could you entertain the idea of a wager on the outcome of a gold sweepstakes race? Goddess of fortune will ever find me her most ardent wooer. Then I propose that if your little car wins the race, I shall pay you $10,000 American. If, however, the little car loses, I become the owner of the car. $10,000 is most modest beginning offer for a little car which has triumphed many times. 15,000 then. 15,000. If, sir, you go so easily from 10,000 to 15,000, you might find it quite painless to go to $20,000. All right, $20,000. Is it a bet then? You have my hand on it.
Now, the gold sweepstakes was not like any other race. It was not on a track, but on the roads in the Sierra Nevada mountains. They're treacherous. Up one mountain, down the other. Any kind of a car could enter, and any kind of crew. It was a 2-day race with an overnight stop at Virginia City, Nevada. On the morning of the race, I went down to see Herby very early. Okay, I know it's been tough, and it's going to be tougher still out here today. Just remember, Jim ain't after the money. He's racing to get you back, Herby. Cool it, take it easy, Herby. Save it for the race. Here comes the rest of our crew.
How's it look?
I don't know. I hope it holds together.
Holds together?
Maybe I shouldn't have done it, but the frame got so beat up that I had to cut it to get it straight again and weld it.
How's our friend?
Ready, Jim. Waiting for you.
Let's mount up. Here comes that rat Thorndyke.
I say, what's this? The morning bus to Fresno?
Thorndyke, this little car is so fast. We need 3 people inside it just to hold it on the road.
Well, you picked the right crew for it, especially that turbo in the back seat there.
Why, you...
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Don't mind me. I got this tendency to black out now and then in a car that does over 20 miles an hour. I'll uncurl my toes now. It looks like we passed everybody.
Everyone but Thorndyke. He must have taken a tremendous lead.
Let's go to work.
There's Thorndyke just up ahead.
Look out! He's dumping oil on the road! This little car goes better off the road than it does on the road. Jim, you're passing mighty near those trees!
That's water ahead. How you gonna cross that stream?
Don't worry, I plugged in the hole. Come on, Herby. You can make it.
And look at all the time we saved. That was a good shortcut Thorndyke's oil slick provided us. Here we are at the road again.
I wonder where Thorndyke is.
I think we're ahead of him. That shortcut saved us a lot of time.
Now what?
It can't be out of gas this soon.
Wait a minute. Let me check the spare gas tank. Oh, no.
What's the matter?
Water. That Thorndyke did it again.
Now what do we do?
Give me the map. Chinese camp is only 3 miles ahead.
As we sat in the car studying the map, suddenly Herby was lifted into the air. 2 long poles were shoved under the little car, and 8 brawny young Orientals raised the poles onto their shoulders and carried us along like a sedan chair. It turned out they were all nephews of Mr. Wu. They carried Herby and all of us into the gas station in Chinese camp, which was also owned by Mr. Wu. Thorndyke was also there trying to get gas, but he wasn't getting any service, while no less than a dozen young men were swarming over Herby, giving us gas, oil, and a full treatment.
Come along with you. I'm in a hurry.
My father say hurry is waste. Waste is correct ball which never hold rice.
I don't care how cracked your father's rice bowl is. I want gas and I want it now.
See you later, Thorndyke.
But we didn't stay ahead long. The next time Thorndyke passed us, he was going so fast, he capsized us. There we were, spinning around on Herby's top like an overturned bug. We soon righted Herby and were on our way again, only to take a wrong turn because Thorndyke had changed the road signs. We got lost in a mine and left the road many times for railroad tracks or goat trails or no path at all. I was getting worried about Herby because he was taking a tremendous amount of punishment. I just hoped that he would hold together. We finally got back to the main road again when one of Herby's wheels came off. When we finally got Herby stopped and got out the spare, we found that Thorndyke had sawed it into 4 different parts like a pizza pie. But nothing could stop Jim. he arranged for me to hang on the outside of the car and throw my weight so that little Herby would run on 3 wheels. Jim said it was like sailing, and it was lots of fun. Not for me, it wasn't. I was scared to death. Sailing, you have ocean under you. In a car, you have cliffs and cactus.
Are you okay, Tennessee?
As long as we stay out of cactus country. You have to stay so close to the edge of this cliff.
A car may come from the other direction. I have to keep a happy medium.
I think we'd better stop. Stop, Jim, will you?
Are you kidding? If we lose the forward momentum, the whole thing's liable to go over. Tennessee, stop thrashing around, will you? Freeze!
Well, I froze, but I was hanging over emptiness for thousands of feet down. Finally, we got the car back on the road and stopped. Now it was getting dark, and we knew that all the other cars had checked into the overnight stop at Virginia City. But we had to finish, and with the aid of a huge wheel from an old steam wagon on one side and the 2 other wheels we had left, we finally made it into Virginia City and checked in. Mr. Wu was there to greet us with some bird's nest soup which surely tasted good, although it was the first time I'd ever eaten a bird's nest. Blech.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wu. Look at it. Wiring is almost all burned off. Cylinder walls are scarred. Carburetor's a mess. Body's gone. Everything barely holding together. It ripped itself to pieces trying to get us here.
I feel sorry for little car.
Mr. Wu, this little car gave us everything it's got. Maybe we could patch it together. I don't know. But how can I send it back into that rat race again tomorrow? It would kill it. It's your car. What do you say?
The wise man has said, when you come to last page, close book.
While everybody walked away, I was left with Herby. I put a blanket gently over him because it was very cold. And then I began talking to Herby like I usually do. But this time Herby didn't answer back. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, silent. Good night, Herby. Sleep warm. I guess I dozed off, but suddenly I was awakened by bright headlights shining in my eyes. It was a big tow truck, and the last person in the world I wanted to see, Thorndyke. Jim and Cal came running up.
What's the idea, Thorndyke?
Douglas, didn't mean to disturb you. We'll just take the little car and go.
Take the little car? What are you talking about?
But I understand you're out of the race.
What's that got to do with you?
Speaking as the new owner of the car, I regard your question as impertinent. All right, lads, hoist up and drag it out of here.
Who said that you're the owner of the car?
Perhaps Mr. Wu can tell you how he wagered the little car on the outcome of the race.
Is this true?
Even as you, I believed in the little car. I thought it would win.
Mr. Wu, how could you do such a thing? I thought you had so much integrity.
Stop kicking Herby.
Little beast, would you say that this is a compact car? You do not answer. But let me tell you, you've never seen a compact car until you see what I'm going to do with this. Mr. Douglas, I have a friend with a claw and hook auto wrecking company in San Francisco, and he's going to work on your little car. Maybe he'll make a bird bath out of it. Or how about a nice doormat so I can wipe my feet on it every day? He's after me! He's after me!
Herby was as angry as I've ever seen him, and he chased Mr. Thorndyke all over the place, and finally off into the darkness. Then he came back and switched off his motor. You know something?
Small car, very angry.
And very strong.
The strength of 40 horses.
The race this morning. You don't think for 1 minute.
I think no chance to remove egg full young off her face.
We worked on Herby all night, and by the time the second half of the race was ready to start the next day, Herby was as ready as he would ever be.
This morning, the second and final lap at the El Dorado, the run for the goal. The drivers will leave in order: and with respect to the time they arrived last night. The contestants in first position is Mr. Peter Thorndyke in the special.
Actually, we were at the end of the line. But when Thorndyke's start was announced, Herby began snarling and roaring and rushed towards Thorndyke's car, and he would have smashed into it too if Jim, Mr. Wu, and I hadn't held Herby back.
A little unscheduled excitement there. The Douglas special rolled across the track, and for a moment it looked as though it would deliberately smash into the Thorndyke car. These mechanics have done a fine job in keying these engines up for a good competitive race this morning. The Thorndyke entry was off at 8 a.m. The time of departure for the next car will be in exactly 6 minutes and 38 seconds. Will the number 2 car please come forward now?
Since we were the last car in, we were the last car to take off. Herby was very impatient. When we finally got the flag, he took off like a deer. One by one, we passed every contestant and finally caught sight of Thorndyke. But he had one last low, dirty trick. As we tried to pass him, he veered his car over and pushed us right off a cliff. Herby rolled over and over and finally landed in a tree far down the side of the mountain. Oh, it took us some time to get Herby out of that tree and back up on the road again, but we managed somehow. And again, we took off after Thorndyke. Can you slow him down a little?
What do you mean?
Like, it won't hang together much longer.
Can't slow down. Never catch Thorndyke. There he is, up ahead.
I think we have a problem. Carol, can you grab that strap? That's it. Now, pull.
Jim, you can't see it, but there's a big crack going right across the back of Herby, and it's getting bigger and bigger.
Hang on. Don't let go.
Tennessee! Right there, over Jim's head!
Okay, I got it.
What goes on here?
Just keep driving, boy. Try not to think about what I'm doing.
There's another crack!
Who was that Dutch kid who put his finger in the dam and saved the tulips and everything?
Jim! The car is cracked into 2 pieces! I think you'd better stop before someone gets hurt!
No dice. Herby doesn't want to stop. I can't control him.
Oh. Oh. Yeah. Here I go on my own. There I was, all alone in the back half of the little car, which soon passed up the front half of the little car, and then passed up the Thorndyke special, and went on to win the race. So Herby's back half was first, Thorndyke was second, and Herby's front half was third. Well, I went to work on Herby immediately, and soon had him all put together again, and good as new. Just in time for Herby to take Jim and Carol off on their honeymoon. I saw them off, and as I waved goodbye, I must say I knew I was going to miss Herby. They rolled down the street. I felt a kind of a nudge, and there beside me was sitting the prettiest little red love bug you've ever seen. Her motor was running smooth as a kitten, and of course there was no one driving her. I named her Sally.